Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, wherever you're joining from. It is a great pleasure to welcome you to the second online engagement session of the Transboundary Freshwater Security Governance Train. My name is Yumiko Yasuda. I'm the Senior Transboundary Water Cooperation Specialist at the Global Water Partnership and the lead faculty of the massive open online course on governance for transboundary freshwater security, which was developed by the GWP, GEF, IW Learn, with many global partners and experts from the field of transboundary water. Since opening of its course in August 2020, the MOOC has now attracted over 1,800 participants, confirming the need and interest for learning about this subject. The course is available for anyone to take at their own space. And my colleague will also type in the chat the link to the course in case you haven't seen it yet. In order to enhance the learning experience and to provide opportunity for people to engage and interact with experts in the field, GWP and Wuhan International Water Law Academy worked together to create an online event series called Transboundary Freshwater Security Governance Train. In this series of events, we will be highlighting not only the key topics of transboundary freshwater governance, but also to highlight various examples and expertise from different geographic locations around the globe, as if the train is stopping at various locations in the world. Together with Wuhan International Water Law Academy, we are planning 6 online sessions specifically focusing on the topic of international water law. Today is the second of these sessions, and the topic is on the ecosystem, international law, and transboundary water cooperation. Today's session has 2 main parts. The first part is a panel discussion by distinguished speakers, where they will be sharing their experiences on the topic and answering your questions. The second part is a breakout session where you will all have opportunity to interact with experts. And today, our transboundary freshwater governance train will be stopping at Asia, Africa, and Europe, welcoming speakers from all these regions. Before we start, I would like to just to give you some housekeeping rules for today's event. This online session will be recorded, so people who could not join due to other commitments or the different time zone will be able to also view the discussion. Please always mute your audio when the moderator or speakers are presenting. You can unmute your audio or will be invited to unmute your audio by the moderator or the chair when requested to speak. This event will not only present the new knowledge, but will also welcome your input in the interactive part. So we count on your presence throughout the whole session. Today's session is designed to be as interactive as possible for you to be able to ask your questions to experts and also to provide your thoughts and feedback to the subject. We'll be using Poll-Eve as the main interactive tool, particularly during the first session. Some of you have already used Poll-Eve while you're waiting for the event to start. So let's see the first Poll-Eve question. If my colleague could, yes, pull up. Now you see some of the responses to the first question. Where are you joining from? If you have not typed in, I'll just give you some seconds for you to type in. Please go to polleve.com/GWP. And then type in where you're coming from. So we see people coming from all the places in the regions we'll be stopping today, in Africa, in Europe, in Asia. We also see people joining from South America. Wow, that must be really, really early in the morning. Thank you very much. Yes, I also see people joining from Australia. That must be also very, very late in the evening. I see more dots coming now. Thank you very much. We will now close this poll and we will go to the next poll now, just to get you prepared now for the main topic of today's session, which is really about the ecosystem. So what do you think? give us your opinion. Should predicted river ecosystem condition be an input to management decision on the shared water courses? Yes or no? Please just type your questions, A or B. So far, everybody is saying yes. We've got some people answering no. Ecosystem should not be the input to management decisions. Okay, thank you very much. Now I can see most of the participants are very aware and interested and concerned about the ecosystem. So that should be a condition into the management decision into the shared water courses. So let's go to the next poll question. Can international water law protect ecosystem conditions of transboundary waters? Yes or no, or I don't know. This is another choice question. Okay, a lot of people are saying yes to this. Quite a few people also saying are not sure about, don't know about this answer to this question. Yes, I can see more people coming in. That's really great. I hope we have now more than 80 people joining the session. So I hope that many of you can join this poll. If you don't know, please go to the polleve.com/GWP. That's the address. You can access here by your website, from your computer, from your mobile phone, open the browser and just type in your answer, because this will be a way to type in your questions. Okay, well, I will stop the poll for this question now. Thank you very much. It's yes, great to see the results here. Since most people, 70% of the people think that the international water law can protect ecosystem conditions in transboundary waters. So let's hear from the experts in today's panel. So if we can go to the next poll, please. So this is now an open-ended question. Here, please type or vote any questions you would like to ask the panelists. So we are going to now keep this poll open throughout the first part of the session where our panelists are going to be presenting. And if you also go to the poll if, you can type in, also you can vote. So if you see somebody else typing in a question, you can also vote if you like that question. Then it will have more votes, and then it will stand out as more interesting and important questions from everybody. I don't see any questions now. I think all of you have submitted questions before you joined and registered, and those questions will be also answered. So please stay tuned. We will keep this poll open, but I hope that you know how to use it. Yes, now we see the first question. How does international law protect and preserve the ecosystem of transboundary watercourses? So how can we apply payment or ecosystem services in transboundary TBA, I suppose transboundary aquifer? So this is really great to see. Please keep typing your questions. As you hear, you might be inspired for some questions to come. You can also vote. Yes, there's one question got the vote. So that became a top priority there. So we will see now, and you can see this. We will keep this open so you can continue to see this on your phone, on your PC during the session. And the chairs will be monitoring, and they will be picking some of the most popular questions that more people want to ask. And you will also have opportunity in the second half of today's session to ask questions directly to the experts. Thank you so much. So please keep asking the questions. Now I would like to start the main session of today. I'm very happy to now introduce two chairs who will be facilitating this main session. Professor Alistair V. Clark and Professor Otto Spijkers. Next slide, please. So Professor Alistair V. Clark is a professor at School of Law at Northumbria University in Newcastle. Some of you may have seen him in the previous event that we conducted. Also, he is our module coordinator for the MOOC that we have developed. He's over 20 years experience in research, teaching, and consultancy related to international law, and particularly on transboundary waters. And he's also been worked at the Center for Water Law Policy and Science, University of Dundee. The fun fact is that Alistair lives near St. Andrews, which is the home of golf and place of 5 handicap. And his biggest achievement in life is family, for sure. Next slide, please. Now, our second chair, which is the co-chair, will be Professor Otto Spijkers. Yes, he's waving his hand right now. He's a founding staff member of the International Water Law Academy and professor at the China Institute of Boundary and Ocean Studies and at the Research Institute of Environmental Law of Wuhan University. He studied international law at the University of Amsterdam and New York University School of Law and Hague Academy of International Law. And he has been teaching in a number of places around the world, including in Europe, also in Africa, I see. And so that is why his biggest achievement in life, I think, is that finding a home in lots of different countries to make himself comfortable everywhere. The fun fact of Otto is that he has recently got a Chinese name. I must admit, I cannot read this in the Chinese way, but I can see it means the high, water, and flat from my Japanese understanding. His name is inspired by his height. He is very tall, and the fact that he was born near the ocean. See, that's why he has these names in Chinese character. I'm sure he can tell you more about it. You can see the detail of this profile on our website. They are all posted there. So now I would like to hand over to two distinguished co-chairs to moderate the session. Please, Alistair and Otto, floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Yumiko. Welcome, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be able to chair this great session, and thanks a lot for everyone for coming along. This is the third session that we've had in this series, and we started off quite broad on international water law. Last one, we had a great session looking at international agreements, their role and relevance. So now we're going on a slightly different topic around ecosystems protection, and I think this is looking sort of how international water law, the role of international water law in protecting ecosystems, and more specifically looking at treaty regimes. And I think this is a really exciting area of international water law. The need, the value in protecting ecosystems is gaining greater political acceptance, greater scientific understanding, and I think international law to some extent is trying to catch up with that, and see how we feed that into our international agreements. And I think we're also seeing this convergence of different areas of law. So international environmental law, multilateral environmental agreements, and the principles underlying them feeding into international water law, into our international agreements. So I think it's a really exciting area to look at and see how ecosystems are addressed. And I think also in terms of the MOOC, it cuts across a number of areas. So some of it's around substantive norms, it's around who gets what water when. It picks up also on the procedural aspects around, what data do we need? How do we assess planned measures through use of environmental impact assessments, for example? How do we engage with stakeholders? Who are the right stakeholders to engage with? And then we also see, as we'll hear from the speakers, picks up in terms of some of the dispute settlement issues, and several recent cases, you can see that this ecosystem, the needs and the valuing ecosystems has come into the decision making of the courts, looking, at the classic Gabčíkovo-Najmaroš case of the ecological impacts of dam upstream, Kishinganga arbitration between India and Pakistan on environmental flows, and the San Juan River cases, talking about using ecosystem services thinking in terms of valuing and issues around compensation. So I think it's a really nice issue that cuts across a lot of international water law. So I'm really grateful, I think, to the panelists. We've got a great group of panelists with us, coming from different perspectives, the lawyers and the non-lawyers. So again, within these sessions, we don't want to just look at law on paper, but challenge a little bit about what's happening in practice. And I think we've got a really brilliant panel to do that. So without further ado, I'll pass over to Otto to introduce the panel. And thanks again, everyone, for coming along.
Yes, thanks a lot, Ali. So I will briefly introduce all the panelists to you. So beginning with Dr. Yang Liu. She recently defended her PhD at the School of Law of Ghent University. That's a city in Belgium. I actually witnessed her doctoral defense from here, Wuhan, so I had to get up in the middle of the night to witness it. She was part of the Xiamen Water Law group here in China a couple of years ago, and she will introduce us to the legal framework and terminology. For example, she will explain to us what an ecosystem actually is, and she will also underline the importance of definitional clarity in international law. Second speaker is Owen McIntyre. He's a professor of environmental law at the School of Law of the University College Cork in Ireland, and he will provide us with a broad overview of the international law landscape relating to ecosystem protection and the protection of transboundary river basins. And when he does so, he will draw upon not only his extensive writing, scholarship, but also his experience as a practitioner in applying the ecosystem approach to particular basins. We then move to Dimitris Faloutsos. He is a deputy regional coordinator of the GWP, so the Global Water Partnership Mediterranean. And he will paint a picture of the Drin River Basin context and illustrate how the ecosystem approach or the ecosystem protection has been taken into account in advancing cooperation within that particular basin. So he will show you lots of maps of the Drin River Basin to explain to you which states are involved and so on. Dimitris also is trying very hard to get a black belt in karate, and he's been practicing for decades trying to accomplish this, but so far he has not succeeded. And this might have something to do with his expertise. We will hear about this later. And then Professor Jackie King, last but not least. She's the founder of Water Matters, an organization housed in South Africa. And she was recently the winner of the very prestigious 2019 Stockholm Water Prize. So drawing on her extensive experience in practice, including with the management of the Kishinganga Dam, she will highlight the current state of scientific knowledge and understanding that has a bearing on ecosystem protection. So a very full program, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing from the experts. I guess we now go to the first expert, and that would be Dr. Yang Liu from Ghent University. At least she defended her PhD there. So I would like to give the floor now to Dr. Yang Liu. You are muted.
Sorry, hello everyone. I will briefly approach the question, what does the protection and preservation of the ecosystems of international watercourses mean? Based on Article 20 of the UNWC, let's have an easy start. The term protect means to protect the watercourse ecosystems from harm and significant harm, and preserve means to maintain the watercourse ecosystem in a natural state and to improve the conditions of watercourse ecosystems. The hard part is about what does the ecosystems of international watercourses mean. Next. Yeah, next. Yeah. Based on the UNWC, the term ecosystems directs to support the drainage basin concept, which requires to protect and preserve the whole basin. But the term international watercourse adopts a narrow watercourse concept, which only covers the water body and the channel water flowing through. Therefore, there is a normative incoherence between these two terms, which further direct to controversial understandings about the geographical scopes of ecosystems of international watercourses. Based on the drafting documents about UNWC and the relevant books and journal articles, I summarized the three approaches in understanding the ecosystems of international watercourses. The first one is a restricted approach, which only covers the aquatic ecosystems. In my understanding, UNWC supports this approach. And the second one is the moderate approach, covers the aquatic and the water-related terrestrial ecosystems, which is supported by the UNECE Water Convention based on the Article 2, as well as the guide to implementing this convention. And the third one is a progress approach, which requires to protect the whole basin. Yeah, please. Next one, yeah. And then next move to other international watercourse agreements in terms of their geographical scopes of ecosystems of shed waters. To be honest, the situation is more complex because diversified terms definitions are used in defining shed waters. Some of them solely use the narrow watercourse concept or the drainage basin concept, and some of them use both these two concepts. And therefore, these differences deepens the normative incoherence. But one good thing is that no matter how they define the shed waters, they either support the restrictive, the moderate, or the progress approach. And one thing to be noted is that the restrictive and moderate approach reflect the terrestrial gap. But the REMS and the CBD can supplement this terrestrial gap because by adopting decisions or resolutions, the REMS and the CBD expressively support the drainage basin concept and encourage states to protect the whole basin. Next. Next, yeah. There is a table. This table listed 25 global and basin level water agreements. It illustrates you the relationship between the definitions of shed waters and the geographical scope of ecosystems protection and preservation. In total, there are seven of the 25 agreements solely adopt a narrow watercourse definition, and 13 of them use both a narrow definition and the drainage basin concept. Therefore, 20 of the 25 adopt a narrow definition of shed waters. It means that it is necessary to define shed waters narrowly in order to differentiate water from land areas because they have different legal status. And 20 of the 25 water agreements differentiate water from land waters. Therefore, shed water bodies and associated areas will have different rules to be applied. In addition, 16 of the 25 water agreements follow a moderate or a progress approach by introducing the drainage basin concept. Therefore, the introduction of a drainage basin concept can expand the applicable scope of ecosystems protection and preservation to achieve the normative coherence required. Yes, thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much. We now move to the second speaker, that is Owen McIntyre. You have the floor, Owen.
Thank you, Otto. Thank you. I just want to reiterate a point made by Professor Rue Clark in his excellent introduction to this session, that ecosystems protection is receiving ever greater political acceptance, and technical understanding is subject to greater technical understanding. If we look at the acceptance of ecosystems protection in international water law, if we go back to the 1992 UNECE Water Convention, we see that ecosystems protection featured quite prominently. I would argue at that time we didn't really understand a great deal about it. This was really a statement of political commitment. Again, included in the UN Watercourses Convention, included again in the International Law Commission's draft articles on transboundary aquifers. So the three global instruments adopt or centrally include ecosystems protection. A range of regional water resources agreements, and of course a range of river basin agreements. In river basin agreements, we see ecosystems protection elements going back quite a long way, even though the language wasn't necessarily highly developed and thinking at a technical level wasn't necessarily highly developed. We see also considerable support in declarative practice going back some time, for example, to the Dublin Statement of 1992, to the Chapter 18 of Agenda 21, also from 1992. But of course, also non-water conventions. And our previous speaker, Dr. Yang Liu, has done really excellent work on the importance of the Convention on Biological Diversity and the Ramsar Convention for informing ecosystems obligations in international water law.
Excuse me, Owen, could you please come a little closer to the microphone?
Of course, sorry.
Thank
is
you
that
very
better?
much. Yes, that's better. Thank you.
Next slide, please. We see increasing judicial support also. Going back to the Gabčíkovo and Agimaros, Alistair pronounced that rather better, case from 1997, we see elements of precaution related to ecosystems, where the court talked about the need for vigilance and prevention in respect of irreversible damage. And this was, of course, to do with the wetland ecosystem as one of the key concerns. We see the emergence of a customary duty for environmental impact assessment in the 2010 pulp mills case. Of course, significant in respect of ecosystems protection. And then, of course, the tribunal under the Permanent Court of Arbitration's Kishinganga arbitration decision in 2013 on an obligation for the maintenance of environmental flows, an obligation derived from a creative interpretation of the 1960 agreement in question. And then, of course, the San Juan River cases, the two joint cases, and the decision from 2015 describing the contested wetland ecosystem as inseparable and stressing obligations for the maintenance of environmental flows and even imposing liability in relation to loss of ecosystem services. Next slide, please. So what we see is that this ecosystem approach has been technically and normatively elaborated to a significant degree in recent years. So from the guidelines adopted the year after the UN Watercourses, or UNECE Water Convention, these guidelines from 93, 94 on ecosystem approach in water management, to the Ramsar Handbook on the Wise Use of Wetlands, we see guidance from a range of different organizations on the ecosystem services concept, from the Secretariat of the Convention of Biological Diversity, the Ramsar Convention Secretariat. I'm afraid I can't see these slides with the chat coming in. The World Resources Institute, the IUCN, UNECE, etc. And of course, in environmental flows, going back to definitional guidance in the Brisbane Declaration from 2007 to guidance developed jointly by the Ramsar and CBD secretariats, by UNESCO, by IUCN, etc. So we have this technical and normative elaboration. Next slide, please. So the real significance, I would suggest, I see that one of the questions that came up in the preparation for this event was, how can the ecosystem services approach inform the design of transboundary water agreements? And I would suggest it has an absolutely key game-changing role in respect of the design or even the ongoing implementation of existing water agreements. It provides a methodology for economic and society or social valuation of benefits. Remember, you know, the cardinal principle, equitable and reasonable utilization, is about an equitable sharing of benefits, but we haven't really had a yardstick. We haven't had a methodology for measuring those benefits. So here we do in the ecosystem services approach. And it provides this methodology, therefore, for reconciling these economic and social benefits. And again, I can't see my slides, I'm sorry, with all the chat popping into my screen. But it provides, very importantly, the potential to enhance international water cooperation by informing the principle of equitable and reasonable utilization, by allowing us to understand benefits, identify, quantify benefits, and thereby to optimize, to cooperate to optimize benefits, to allow for upstream, downstream cooperation through, for example, payment for ecosystem services or other benefit sharing arrangements for stewardship and use of waters, and you know, complex benefit sharing arrangements. To my mind, the ecosystem approach based on ecosystem services is the missing piece in transboundary water cooperation, and its ongoing development can only be welcomed. Sorry for running a little over time.
Thank you very much, Owen. So we now move to the third speaker, that is Dimitris, and he will talk to us about the Drin River Basin and about his ongoing efforts to get a black belt in karate. I now give him the 5 minutes. You are muted. Can you please unmute yourself?
I have been trying. It seems my karate experience does not assist me in this, so I will spare you. I was asked, I proposed that I generalize from my experience in the Drin Basin, but I was asked to stick to the Drin Basin. I'll do so. It's a complicated one, environmental hotspot. One of the lakes is a UNESCO heritage monument. By the way, it's lying in the southeastern Europe. There are 3 lakes, Transboundary, each one of them a river connecting them, flowing in the Adriatic. Now, benefits for the society and the economy, apart the ecosystem has an inherent value, but it has also, we all know, benefits for the society and the economy. At the national level, does anyone do that, something about that? In this part of the world, it does, but not because they truly understand what's going on. Alistair indicated earlier that indeed, the understanding about the ecosystem, the value vis-a-vis the economy, etc., it's a bit not very clear. But in this part of the world, there's a rule of law. And I will explain the connection between national and transboundary law. It's the EU Water Framework Directive. All those countries there are other members of the European Union or aspire to become one. So the EU Framework Directive introduces a requirement of ecological protection and a general minimum chemical standard. So good ecological status, good chemical status, the countries need to do something about that. They have no other way. Do they do it? That's another question. Now, a bit of information about what we're talking about. The cascade of dams, in North Macedonia, 38% of the basin is modified. In Albania, 55% of the basin is modified. But before starting shouting about how miserably they manage the basin, we should go back for Albania, for example, in the communist era, where the water was the only source of energy. So they produce 80% of their energy in the country in this specific basin. So I'll start introducing from the theory how to the realities, what's going on and what's the driver in terms of how we manage ecosystems at the national and transboundary level. Here we see the impact of hydropower in the other ecosystems. We have also, here we have the colorful map showing the input of nutrients. We can find a good amount of nutrients reaching out to the Adriatic. So I'm trying to say there are pressures. We have colorful maps about the biodiversity, water-related and land-based ecosystems, and the cumulative effect of the uses is indeed considerable. Now, how it stands in terms of transboundary cooperation. 2011, there was an international soft law, as lawyers advised me to call it, an MOU. Grassroots, in its objective is to safeguard and restore to the extent possible the ecosystems and the service they provide. As Alistair indicated in the beginning, did they really understand what this is about? Yes and no, but this was a very first offer to start working in the basin, having as an end goal the preservation of the ecosystems. There is a joint body being established. There was financing from the GEF, and there was science. I agree with both Professor McIntyre and Professor Clark. Science is an indispensable factor in terms of initiating and advancing transboundary cooperation. What we did there is identifying those issues that would have an effect to the socio-economy and underlie that apart from the ecosystems. There was an ecosystem flows, a coarse way of doing it, but indeed there was one, the assessment, and then an action plan. One of its goals is to preserve the ecosystems. Now, we go from the national level to the transboundary level. Now, where we're here, is this a necessity to have the ecosystem protection and preservation? Now, in the case of the DREAM, the countries have requested to have an international agreement being formulated. Now, when we go from the national to transboundary, there's a change in the attitude. Now they say, kind of say, okay, the ecosystems, we need to preserve them vis-a-vis what the other countries may do. For example, in a lake, is there input, is there pollution from the other countries? So our fisheries are endangered. Now, in this case, gradually there is an understanding also that the ecosystems in the post-COVID era, the ecosystems are natural infrastructure. And there's also a political situation in European Union for the greening of the economy. So in this case, in this part of the world, the necessity to take into consideration the benefits is imposed both by policy and by the society and the socio-economy. Of course, there is an aligned water legislation in each and all the countries. Those two assist in taking into consideration the ecosystem preservation. The multilateral environmental agreements also assist in building good cooperation and codifying international water law. I'm finishing on science, as explained, has a role in establishing cooperation, understanding what are the issues that endanger ecosystems, and we can discuss about the flows, etc., later on, whether it assists or not, and tools to be used for the implementation of transboundary legal instruments. A transboundary diagnostic analysis action program is setting the baseline and the goals where to get, and the means to get there would be a river basin management plan, and it is also assist in following the implementation of transboundary agreements. And with this, I'll finish. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dimitris. So we now give the floor to the last speaker, Jackie King. But before we give the floor to Jackie, I just wanted to say that I've been looking at the number of participants, and we seem to be getting very close to 100, but not quite there. I find that very frustrating. So if you know 2 or 3 of your friends, please ask them to join us so that we get over the 100. I now give the floor to Jackie King. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be with you, and thank you for the invitation. As a river scientist, I have been studying rivers for more than 40 years now, and during that time have watched the increasing water resource development of rivers. And then during the last 40 years, 30 years watching the increasing concern around the world of the degradation that water resource developments are causing. We've learned more and more that everything is connected, and when you start to interfere and intervene on the flow or the sediment movements along rivers, everything starts to change in the river system. The channels, the trees, the wildlife, the birds, the reptiles, and in vast areas of the world, hundreds of millions of people depend on healthy rivers, and so they too are affected as the rivers start to change. With the increasing concern over this degradation, the last 20 years has seen the appearance of ecosystem models which are trying to predict what those changes could be, and by doing so, make an input into the decision-making process. Back when, in the early days of development, most of the decisions were being made on fairly narrow engineering and economic criteria, and bringing in the information on how the river itself and its people could change opens up the discourse quite considerably. Could I go to the next slide, please? I'm going to focus on, there are many ecosystem models now emerging around the world. I'm going to focus on one called drift because that simplifies the explanation, and also it's the one I'm most familiar with. This little diagram in the top left corner shows the kinds of models that were being used to make water resource development decisions up to about 20 years ago. Engineering models, hydraulic models, hydrological ones, and so on. And they were really speaking to just one of the three pillars of sustainable development, the economic wealth pillar. Once you add in ecosystem models, you start to bring in the social and the ecological perspectives, and suddenly all three parts of the sustainable development, including social equity and ecological integrity, start to become part of the discourse. A couple of examples of how we've used this kind of work are shown here. The middle picture here are 8 maps of the whole Okavango Basin under 8 different levels of water resource development, going from top left to bottom right. And with color coding, we show how the river gradually changes from a pristine system to a fairly degraded one. This is a very powerful set of maps because they allow people at any point along the system to see how their part of the river would change with any of the developments that might happen in that scenario. We can unpack those colors as well, as we have done here for the lower Mekong Basin, where we can show how the fish communities would change from present day and under 3 different scenarios of water resource development. And the overall message is that essentially the fish numbers beget less and less and less, and the community changes from ones with highly favored white fish to more generalist robust fish, which are not so sought after and not so valued by the people along the river system. Next slide, please. We also saw how these ecosystem models not only have started to move into river basin management discourse, but also into the arena of law. And I was privileged to give testimony at the Permanent Court of Arbitration in the Pakistan versus India case on Kishanganga Dam. The court decided after their deliberations that under the Indus Waters Treaty, India could build the dam on the Neelam River, which is this big one going past here. But then they asked something quite profound. They asked for a full picture of the sensitivity of the river system to flow changes. And we could do it. This model can predict through scenario after scenario exactly how the river would change under all these different possible flow rate changes. And this was the basis of the environmental flows decision, which was made by the court and was inserted into the Indus Waters Treaty. Next slide, please. What we found is that this opening up of discourse has led to a lot more complexity and in decision making. It's not just now a simple case of build the dam and here's how many jobs and how much irrigation it would produce. There are now huge arrays of ecological and social issues to think about. And we found that this sort of concept here can help people figure out just how they're going to deal with all this extra information. This is a graph of how a basin will change under increasing water resource development, with the development increasing the change of flow in the river and decreasing the ecosystem condition. And through using a number of scenarios that these ecosystem models can produce, you can work out as a basin with your governments or in a transboundary situation with several governments, where you are at the moment and what is the furthest level of change that you're willing to accept in your river system in order to get some benefits. By doing that, you've essentially put the limit on what we think is sustainable development. This reveals how much development potential there remains in a basin and allows the transboundary governments involved then to start to negotiate on how much of that development space each of them can have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jackie. I saw that we just went over 100, so that's awesome. I'm very happy to see that. Over 100 participants. So we will now have a short Q&A session that will be done by me and my co-chair, Ali. But we're actually going to ask questions to the panel that came from you, the participants. So these questions we did not invent, but we actually got from you. And I wanted to start off by asking a question to Dr. Yang Liu, if I may. And this is actually the question that was most popular in the poll that we started at the beginning of this webinar. So the question is, what are the similarities and differences between the various water law treaties, in particular the UNECA 1992 Water Convention and the UN Water Courses Convention of 1997 in terms of eco-protection? And then related to this, what if there is no treaty? So that was the most popular question in the poll just now. What if there is no treaty applicable at all? Then which customary international law could be used by states not signatories to any treaty to manage their water course? So you have the floor.
Okay, yeah, thank you for both the questions. I will start with the first one, differences and similarities between the UNECE and the UNWC. In terms of the similarities, they both require states to individually or jointly protect and preserve the ecosystem of the shared waters. The key aspect is about the differences. In my opinion, the differences rest on the geographical scopes of the ecosystem protection duty. As I mentioned before, the UNWC only requires to protect and preserve the aquatic ecosystems. This argument is based on the drafting documents of the UNWC as well as the narrow concept of water course. While the UNECE Water Convention requires to protect both the aquatic and the water-related terrestrial ecosystems. This was based on the Article 2 of the UNECE Water Convention, as well as a guide to implementing this convention, because this guide expressly interprets that the term ecosystems not only covers the water ecosystem as well as the water-related ecosystems. This is the answer to the first question. In terms of the second question, I think a majority of us may know that there are three customary international water law rules, namely the principle of equitable and reasonable utilization, which in those areas where parent states a reasonable and equitable share of the uses and benefits of an international watercourse, while they cannot deprive other watercourse states of the right to an equitable utilization. And the second principle is about the prevention of significant harm. It means that in utilizing an international watercourse, the state shall take all appropriate measures to prevent the causing of significant harm to other watercourse states. Our understanding of harm not only also includes the harm to the environment or the ecosystem. And the third principle is the duty to cooperate on the protection, utilization, and management of international watercourses. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, very interesting and also very helpful. So if there are any states listening to us, please be reminded there's a duty to cooperate and a duty to equitably and reasonably use your watercourse in line with principles of sustainable development. So I now wanted to ask a question to Professor Owen McIntyre. And this is a question about the Sustainable Development Goals. They were not yet mentioned. So I would like to ask you, could the Sustainable Development Goals, and then in particular, SDG 6 on water, SDG 14 on life below water, well, that's more about the oceans actually, and the ecosystem goal, could they support the role of international law in ecosystem protection? You have the floor.
Thank you, Otto. I think the SDGs are a very important issue, and I think they do have the potential to augment cooperation over shared transboundary waters, and in particular around ecosystems protection of transboundary watercourses. In many ways, the SDGs are a game changer because we have pretty much universal buy-in to a set of values, which, though not binding in a formal legal sense, really do represent the solemn commitments of states to a range of quite highly developed. When we look at the SDGs with their associated targets and then with the associated indicators and reporting processes, and our colleague Alistair, Professor Rue Clark, has been centrally involved in the reporting process under SDG 6.5.2 on transboundary cooperation.
You are a bit hard to hear.
Sorry. And I was just pointing out that Alistair has been very centrally involved in SDG 6.5.2 and reporting under SDG 6 on transboundary cooperation on water resources. That these, together, the quasi-normative, if you like, commitments and obligations enshrined in the SDGs represent a ramping up, if you like, of international commitments in regard to the protection of I suppose particularly environmental and ecological values. So they're very, very, very important in that regard. I see SDG 6 as being particularly important for transboundary water cooperation, for the realization of human rights entitlements, for the promotion of transboundary water cooperation, and doing so in a transparent way because of reporting requirements. I see them as being particularly important in that regard, yes. And a new paradigm in that regard.
Thanks very much. That was very insightful. I now ask a question to Dimitris. What are the key features of a successful joint project contributing to the protection of transboundary waters and their ecosystem? And when you answer this question, can you also say something about particular problems that emerge when countries share a transboundary watercourse when they are actually in conflict with each other? Because this was a question that was particularly popular in the polls. So what are the challenges the particular challenges when the two countries don't really get along very well? Thanks. We seem to have lost contact with Dimitris. Okay, so then I move to Jackie, if that's okay. So I will ask Jackie the question: how can an ecosystem services approach inform the design of transboundary water agreements? It's a very general question, and I do look forward to your reply based on your extensive experience in practice. Thanks very much. You have the floor.
Thank you, Otto. If we look at what we mean by the ecosystem approach or nature-based solutions, we're essentially saying that we want to address the challenges that we have as humans with our lifestyles, but we want to base this on a scientific understanding of the organization and functioning of the natural world. We want to try and do our development in a way that doesn't damage the planet. And you'll see that in the various statements and missions and visions and so on of river basin organizations and governments across the world: sustainability, sustainable use, sustainable development, and so on. But I've struggled for years to find out what sustainable development actually is in practice and how you measure it. I wrote to governments across the world and other organizations such as GWP many years ago and said, if I offer you some scenarios, how will you know which one represents sustainable development? And they all wrote back with different answers of the same kind, which said, well, we don't really know, but let us know when you find out. I can't say too strongly how the development of ecosystem models has changed that picture, because now we have a means not of stopping development, not of supporting development, but opening up the discourse on development. Now we can see the costs in terms of ecological and social degradation that go with the benefits of more jobs, more irrigation, food security and water security and power security. So now we have the means of allowing governments to open up the discourse on where they want the balance to be. What do they want the trade-off to be? And I've seen maps like those little ones I showed you for possible futures for the Okavango system. I've seen governments look at maps like that for their river systems and say, now I know what I want. It's that simple little graphic picture of balancing costs against benefits. And so I can't even remember what my question is. How can that ecosystem approach inform the design of transboundary water agreements? That opens up the discourse to the point where you no longer go straight for the biggest dam and the most electricity and water you can, but you balance that. I have asked and asked again, and we all have, look at the 3 pillars of sustainable development. Don't base everything on an economic bottom line. Don't subsume the ecological and social costs into an economic bottom line, because it doesn't work very well. You have to find ways to consider all 3 of those separately and then come up with an appropriate trade-off. And that designs the treaty in a fair world. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. That's, again, a lot of food for thought. I'm wondering if my co-chair, Ali, may have some follow-up questions or maybe some comments. I would like to give the floor now to my co-chair.
Yes, thanks, Otto. I don't know if Dimitris, if we can get Dimitris back to make sure he give him an opportunity to respond. But I did. There was this one question, and I'll maybe open it up and invite the panelists, whoever wants to answer it, to provide a response. But it's this. It's a question from Robert in the chat, which is essentially around enforcement, looking at transboundary water resources, issues that walking and the talking might be problematic, and how do we deal with enforcement? So I wonder, sort of particularly where there is, where there is evidence of ecosystem degradation, there are, it seems like treaty commitments aren't being complied with. How can we address that? A nice easy question for anyone who wants it.
Shall I have a go at a couple of things?
Please.
We've found that having the right law in place is an incredibly important first step. You can't do anything if you haven't got something that requires a certain thing be done. As you say, enforcement is far, far more difficult. The getting to that first step of understanding what we needed to do and get it into law probably took us 20 or 30 years. I think it's going to take much longer than that to get the second step in place, which is effective enforcement of the law. We see that the laws developed in a government head office in one part of a country never filter through to the dam operator hundreds of kilometers away in another part of the country. We see municipalities which don't have the capability of enforcing these kind of laws. They don't even have the money to send people out to monitor what is happening. So we're a long way from having our law enforced, but it is a first step to have that law. Perhaps one of the ways to take a step further is through social media and linkages where people can report what's going on and sidestep the fact that monitoring just isn't happening in so many parts of the world. I've seen one system in Southern Africa, for instance, where farmers all the way along the river are linked up to their catchment management agency through a WhatsApp group, and they get instructions about when to stop taking water, how to keep the river going, and so on, and they cooperate as a basin. I've seen another situation in Kruger National Park where the ranger watching the river flow, which has a legally required flow that must come down it, he reports that the flow has stopped. The dam operator says he cannot release any more water because he can only release as much water as comes into the reservoir. This goes up to headquarters, all on a WhatsApp group, and someone in the Department of Water at headquarters says, release more water. 2 days later, the ranger says, okay, the river's back up to scratch. And they all do a sort of high fives on WhatsApp. So cooperation at some sort of local scale is stepping in sometimes where overall country monitoring isn't yet working.
Great, thanks.
It seems that we have regained contact with Dimitris. Dimitris, are you there? No. Okay. So we only have about 2 minutes. So I was wondering if anyone would like to comment on the relationship between ecosystem protection and the preservation of biological diversity. I thought that was a particularly interesting question that was raised by one of the participants. So would anyone like to comment on that, this relationship?
May I have a try to answer this question?
Yes, yes, of course.
Yeah, actually this question directly links the international water law to the CBD, and because based on my PhD dissertation, and I found out that the substantive and procedural obligations in international water law and CBD are parallel. They are mutually complementary. And I would like a good example is the duty to protect and preserve water-course ecosystem and the duty to conserve biodiversity. Under the international water law, a focus is about the rights and obligations on the utilization of shed waters and also the prevention of harm. Therefore, minor attention is paid to the preservation of water-course ecosystems. As I mentioned before, preserve is to maintain and also to improve. Therefore, there is a drawback under the international water law, while the duty to conserve biodiversity under the CBD corresponds to the term preserve. And the CBD provides specific tools in terms of how to conserve biodiversity, especially by designating protected areas and also thematic programs, especially the program about the inland water biodiversity. Yes, thank you.
Thanks. That was very helpful to give a very brief general overview of this linkage and interrelationship. I think we can now move to the next part of the program. So I would propose to give the floor to Yumiko. Yumiko, you have the floor.
Hello. Thank you so much. It was a fantastic discussion and presentation. What a wide range of subject around the ecosystem, from law to science to policy. I think you really got a gist of key issues surrounding ecosystem and international water law in the transboundary water governance context. So now we would like to give you opportunity to ask directly the questions to the panelists and in the breakout room. So our aim is here, you have put in the questions. We didn't have time to address all the questions. You can choose who you would like to speak to, and you can go to that room. So it's almost like as if you are attending a conference, and after the presentation, you can go up to the speaker and want to ask the questions. We are trying to simulate this in online context. Okay, so we have 4 groups. Now, Dimitris, I don't think he's back. If you are back, please just unmute yourself and indicate. Apologies from him. I got it from on our WhatsApp chat. Today, there was a snow in Athens, Greece, where he's based, and there was a major power cut in the city. So he lost his connection because of the power cuts, and he's trying to connect from the phone. Dimitris, are you here?
Yes, we're used in the summer when we have snow here in Athens. Situation gets rough.
Okay, great to have you back. Okay, so we will keep the 4 groups now. We will have the group 1 will be Jackie King and Alistair Reed Clark will be in the group. So if you want to have, if you have questions to them, please go to group 1. Group 2 will be Yan Liu and Otto Spikers. Please go to them if group 2. Group 3 will be Owen McIntyre and Barbara Janus Paoletta. Barbara, for those who don't know, she is a vice rector at the German Catholic University. Also, she is the technical committee of the Global Water Partnership and also the module coordinator of this MOOC. The 4th group will be the Dimitris Falutosos and Dave Developnik. Dave, for those who don't know, he's a lecturer in China, in Chongqing University, and he's also part of this Wuhan International Water Law Academy team, and is very much engaged in this online sessions, and also helping us as a module coordinator for international water law in the MOOC. So how you can choose here, the breakout room here, is that if you go to the bottom of your screen, there is an icon says breakout. Now you see, here you see the icon. If you click the icon, you can see the different rooms, and then you can just choose a room. Once we actually open the room, you will see the list. Now you don't see that. Now you can start to see, yes, on the bottom, now you see join. You just click the join button. So and then in case you have any questions about the MOOC in general or International Water Law Academy, please stay in this main session, because Professor Patricia Wooders, who is the director of the Wuhan International Water Law Academy, and myself will be staying in the main session here. So in case you would like to ask any questions to us. So now we'll have about 15 minutes in this breakout group. So anyone to join. And if you went to the wrong place, you can also get out of the breakout and come back and select your own. So I hope it is clear for you. So now please, the tech host, yes, bring the people or the open the breakout, and people can just, yes, go there.
Yes, the rooms are open, and please select the room you'd like to join. The speakers are on the name of the breakout session, and have a good discussion.
Great, thank you. I myself am not the Pat. I don't know. Maybe you would like to comment on.
Yes. Yeah. I think Dr. Yang Liu covered this really well in terms of, definition. What is a watercourse? So the watercourse, does it include an aquifer? And if it includes an aquifer, how do we determine the legal bounds of aquifer? So most of us in international water law understand that this is an issue, and it becomes an issue of legal reach and definition. And so we understand that the system works together, but what is the system? So now there's a case ongoing before the International Court of Justice on the Salala case. Between Chile and Bolivia, what is an aquifer? What is a transboundary aquifer? How does it connect with the system? So I agree. You can find a lot of our work on transboundary aquifers, and you can see how we work with scientists on defining the legal reach, and also the substantive rules that apply on transboundary aquifers and procedural. So, and in many respects, if I can go back to that, there is this customary rule of international law that everybody's entitled to an equitable and reasonable use of the shared uses of transboundary waters. So where do aquifers come in? Well, is it a transboundary water? And if so, how? And how do we share the uses of that transboundary waters? And I suppose if you look at today's session, how do we do that in a way that takes on board, protection and preservation of ecosystem? Hope that helps, but lots of us have written a lot on transboundary aquifers in international water law. Thanks for your question.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pat. And if you're also interested in the scientific aspect of the transboundary aquifer and so on, there is actually, we have one lecture and some case studies on actually what we call conjunctive management of transboundary water aquifer in the module 5 of our MOOC. So please go and watch those videos. And I know that also currently, I think UNESCO is running some online training course on this very subject. Okay, anyone else? I saw previously Kamala had a hand up, but I don't see her. Yes. Anyone else has a question?
Maybe we could just go ahead and let everyone sort of introduce themselves and have a few words about why they're here today. And I just like to say, I'd love to see you all in Wuhan. I'm in Scotland right now, but we're really looking forward to our launch of the International Water Law Academy in Wuhan. I really thank again GWP for making this interactive. I firmly believe, from all of my experience in international water law and transboundary water cooperation, we need to meet, we need to greet, we need to talk, we need to keep talking. So please, let's hear from you. Just tell us anything.
So feel free to, yes, I see Sandra. Please unmute.
So good morning. First, my apologies because I was with the mobile telephone. So I have to change completely to my computer to be able to engage again. So I have been following your program, your MOOC, your several videos and conference. I find very interesting. And I have a special case because I am working now with the water governance in the transboundary basin between Colombia and Ecuador. And we have building some very positive cooperation with Colombia in order to conceptualize what governance means for this region, and especially because Colombia is facing a special situation with the Venezuelan border. So the idea is that what we are doing in Colombia, in Ecuador transboundary waters, we try to extrapolate to the scenario of Colombia and Venezuela, even though the elements are completely different. So we are trying to enforce the idea of water governance elements in this area, and also to use or to introduce some another approaches or frameworks as a polycentric governance, or trying to find out what factors can help for the really increasing conflict that is over the natural resources in the border between Colombia and Venezuela, because I cannot talk about from Colombia government, but they are the local organizations, they are really feeling that they are losing the battle against the local domains groups, that they are taking control over those issues. So I am kind of following all the issues in the, maybe with another experience in the world, to see how we can connect with these cases. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Sandra, for that comment, and really excellent that you're really thinking about this very question, I think, of the governance. It's not really a straightforward question. It really involves so many different aspects. And I think, you know, in developing the MOOC, we try to really capture it. But there's a lot more to, even more that, you know, in our MOOC, we have, you know, as you have seen, 6 modules from introduction to law aspects, political aspects, what are diplomacy, negotiation, and institutional aspects. And then we have the financial aspects, and we have different management tools. It's really, but you know, we really have to pick and choose when we design this, because you know, we could not make the course too big. And but so there are a lot more, particularly a lot more tools that also you can engage in this process of you know, very much implementing this aspect onto the ground. And I think it's really important to think about the linkages. How do you actually use these, you know, negotiation tools in actually designing the law, or you know, how can actually law help in really building the institutions and to really build a solid ground? And I think those are the really key components of the governance, I would say. Pat, if you may have.
Yes, on that, 2 points. It's always about the people. Always about the people. Don't worry about the law or the governance or all this negotiation stuff. Go to people. Now, GWP has an amazing collective in across Latin America. You have some fantastic groups you should meet up with and get connected with through the GWP network. I find that transboundary water cooperation is incremental and based on people to people. So you talked about local engagements across, you know, Colombia and Venezuela border. Who are the engineers or the national governments involved? And I would suggest building a community of transboundary cooperation built on people. And that will start to cascade transboundary water cooperation. In terms of international law, there are loads of great examples across Latin America. A lot of excellent international water lawyers across Latin America. I firmly believe in regional approaches. I've looked at regional approaches to transboundary water courses. So I would start at home and build from the basin up. And if you have any more questions for me on how the legal framework looks on that, I can help you. But you know, the overarching goal, you can talk to everybody on the ground. You don't have to be a lawyer. It's how do we cooperate? Technical cooperation is always a great way forward, and it's people. So good luck with that, Sandra. I've loved your question. I'll have a closer look at the Colombia, Venezuela, and Ecuador situation. Thanks a lot. Love it.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you. We have about 5 minutes left now in this small group discussion. So if anyone else would like to say hello and ask questions or just make comments, that's fine. Please just unmute yourself and speak up. You're welcome. Pat, you need to unmute. You're muted.
Yeah, I would like to speak to the LMC Water Center there, or anybody. I mean, yes. Tara, I think I know you. Just someone say hi. It's about people to people. I want to know, see faces, know people.
And happy Chinese New Year.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, hello, Professor Utus and Nico. We are
hello,
here.
Yafei. Nice to see you. Welcome.
Hi. Oh my gosh, it just brings it. I'm so happy to see you. I can't tell you. I wish I was there. I wish I was there sitting with you. And you know, the Chinese celebrations.
You know, we are here in the middle of the holidays, so we are here special for your session. And my colleague and I are very keen to improve our knowledge on the transboundary water cooperation. I think still the Land-Mekong cooperation is in the early stage, but we need to identify this the topic of priorities and talk to our colleagues, right, in other countries, and also build trust and develop joint programs. And I think most of the topics can be accommodated in the GF project, and UNICO and also the IMI and the World Bank we are working with. So we are very excited about these the opportunities and the potential for the Land-Mekong cooperation in the future. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And once again, I get back to my message. Now, Yumiko introduced me to Dong Yang Fei and the LMC, and we have got so many communications. And so I would like to say, we learn more from you. So it's wonderful. I'm so happy to see you. Thanks for coming in during your holidays. We're sorry, right, Yumiko, with the time, but makes me so happy to see all of you. Thank you so much. I look forward to being there in Wuhan or in China with you. Thanks for saying hi.
Thank you for your efforts. We all enjoy this session.
Yeah, a lot. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Fantastic to see colleagues eagerly participating during the New Year holidays.
Yeah, wow.
Yes. Anyone else who would like to say hello? Perhaps we have some speakers from the last session. Peter Kova and Dinara.
Oh,
I see you. I see you also here. If you would like to say hello, you're welcome. Yes, I also see Zaki Schuber, who is also speaking in our International Water Law module. If you would like to say hello, please just unmute yourself, switch on your video, and say hello.
I think it's important that some of the people we can't see come up and say hi, and I'd love to hear from anyone. Actually, I would note that there is a strong Dundee connection, Yumiko, from you being alumnus in Dundee, and Dinara being an alumnus in Dundee. And I mean, once again, I go back to the message of, and Zaki was in Dundee, the people to people. Never give up on that. Transboundary water will always be a long-term game, and it will be built incrementally. So keep the faith. Hang in there, meet your friends, have loads of fun like we did in Dundee, and let's keep going. Who wants to say hi?
Thank you. I see Daval raising a hand again. Is this a fresh new hand?
Way to go, Daval.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, actually, I wanted to ask a question. Can we think on nation-wide rainwater management program that can help in avoiding transboundary conflicts?
I think that's a really great idea. The rainwater harvesting. It's a real great way to really resolve one of the water shortage issues. So yes.
Oops. Are we going back, I guess?
Yes.
Oh, closing in 26. Well, rainwater, yes, we've hosted groups from India in particular in Dundee on the rainwater, and anything that can help contribute to the resource and be shared is helpful. So thanks for waiting that, Deval. I like that question.
I have shared a link. I have shared a link with in the chat. Rainwater management and its impact on the transboundary water supply and all the aspects of the environment.
Yeah, yeah.
Because rainwater management is about making nations self-dependent.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Yumiko. I'll just mute myself.
Thank you very much. I think is everybody back from the breakout session?
Yes.
Are you all back?
Yep.
Yes. How was that experience? I hope you all managed to get some great discussions, managed to ask some questions to our panelists and the chairs and the module coordinators. So now in the last 10 minutes, I would like to conclude the session, today's session. I would very much like to thank all of you for participating and all the speakers and let's say chairs and the organizing team and the Wuhan International Water Law Academy. It has been a fantastic collaboration, and we had a fantastic line of speakers who really gave a wide range of topics and a very active discussions in the chat, in the pre-session questions, and in the poll. So thank you very, very much. I would like to just take a few moments to reflect on today's session. If you can go to the next poll question. Now, again, some final polls for you. This is an open question. If you can tell us, what have you learned from today's session? Just in few words, please just type in few words. It would be nice to see, just to reflect. Always it's good to reflect after you had some intensive sessions, not just to switch off your computer, but just to reflect a little bit. Take a few minutes to think about what you have learned. And please go to pauleve.com/GWP and type in your answer. Complexity of transboundary water management. Very true, very true. Very, very important things to address. Anyone else would like to share what you're learned about? The role that modeling can play in the governance of international water courses. Yes, thank you, Jackie. You really emphasized that importance. Better understanding of sustainability. The drift model, yes. The obstacle in enforcing international water law. Yes, always a challenge. Ecosystem approach. Yes, we had a very good, started actually from very good definition, introduction from Yan Li. The values of ecosystems. The international law regulates a number of areas in transboundary water management. The nuances of how ecosystems are understood in international water law. Ecosystem approach is growing in prominence and is a great way of helping to conserve our planet. And ecosystem health and management are key to good water resources management. I have learned about the harmonization of different pieces of legislation, such as water law, environmental, and international investment law. That's great. Here, actually, we will have sessions on international water law coming up, investment coming up in June here. The sessions. Get your law in practice first and then work on enforcement. Good, interesting approach, yes. Yes, we need to start from somewhere. Relation between science and law. Biodiversity ecosystem services must be part of equation. SDG 6.5.2, yes, that's important. Thank you so much. I think these are really great to hear what you have learned and your reflection. More coming in. I would just like to now close this poll in a few seconds and go to the next one. So we would like to know what you would like to see in the next interactive session. You can tell us about the topic, or you can tell us about the way that we do. You know, we are actually, it was the first time for us today to do this in this way of breakout session, where actually you could choose yourself to go to breakout. In the last session, we just divided people randomly into different breakouts. So if you liked it, tell us that you liked it, or if you want it in another way for better interaction, also please tell us, or anything that you would like to see. Great, thank you so much for the commenting on the format, thumbs up. Yes, water dispute settlement. That's a very important topic. I would like to comment that there is also a MOOC lecture on that in the international water law on the dispute settlement. Yes, Zaki, who is participating today, is giving a lecture there, and there are some case studies. Cooperation between the states about water quality issues. Water quality, that's also, yes, very, very good point. Yes, water conflicts. Yes, there's a lot there. If you, yes, great webinar of change makers. Thank you very much. I think in a way we shared some experience of the change makers today with the distinguished speakers, case studies. At GWP, we also have something called Water Change Makers Award. I don't know if some of you might have seen that. We got the competition and we got really great cases from all across the world. The governing river basin models, yes. That's an interesting one. There's really no one-size-fits model, I would say. It's a real combination of different things, but I think you could learn some of the models from the MOOC as well. Society involvement in the river management, yes, very important. Stakeholder engagement. We have that lecture in the module 5 of the MOOC. Water diplomacy, yes, we have the module dedicated for that. Yes, determination of environmental flow, and so on. How can we make International Water Law Treaty more popular for the states? That's a good question. Okay, so thank you so much for that. I would now like to, in a few minutes, we will be closing this pool, and then we will just be concluding our session today. Very much appreciate, and actually, we will be sending you post-event evaluation form by email. You will get the email from Tobias, my colleague, who's been very much driving the preparation for this. Please do also share your thoughts in that because it's a very, very useful way for us to know how it was and what you're also looking for to make. So thank you very much. And yes, I would like to now close the poll here. We'll take all this into consideration. Now, many of the things that you want to learn are also already in the MOOC, the basic things. If you have not signed up to the MOOC, please do so. We have this MOOC that is really covering a wide range of things from water security, water diplomacy, negotiation, international water law, and institutions, management tools and mechanisms, finance for transboundary water security. And a lot of speakers today are also featured in the MOOC, and they're giving lectures. And of course, on international water law, Alistair is giving the lecture. Barbara, who was also in your group discussion. Owen is giving us a lecture on the water law and institutional linkages. And I think there are also, there was also people who are interested also in more learning about the models. Jackie is actually giving lecture on precisely on that, on decision support system. If you want to learn more about the Dream Basin, Dimitris has a great presentation on his Dream Basin on the module 5 under the management tools and mechanisms. So please do sign up to the MOOC. And we had a great discussion today, and there's always not enough time. And if you like to continue the discussion, there is a way to do. If you sign up to the MOOC, you can join the discussion forum. And this is a screenshot of how the discussion forum looks like. You see on the, if you go on the top, there is a tab called discussion. You can enter the discussion either from each module or from this tab. And we have created some discussion forum specifically for the event. Actually, the discussion forum already exists, like some prompt questions, but we also created some specific discussion forum following from these events, online events. So if you would like to continue the conversation after this event, please type in your thoughts, questions into this special section that we will be, my colleague will be creating another tab on today's event. So you can actually type in any questions, comments or into that. And please also share with each other. This is very much an opportunity for peer-to-peer learning. Thank you so much. And even in the audience, I know many of you have such a wealth of knowledge that I really hope that you will be able to learn. And then really let's make this community grow of a transboundary freshwater governance and its security chain. So I think that now I can, yes, next, if you can, the next slide. So we are now together with the Wuhan International Water Law Academy. We are having this series of 6 sessions that are coming up. We decided to do it now for the 6 sessions every 3rd Tuesday of the month. So the next one will be on the 16th of March on Transboundary Water Cooperation and the role of institutions. And you will see, and we have already preparing some great lineup of speakers. Alistair and Barbara are preparing for that sessions to chair. So please stay tuned. You will receive the information about it. And you can also go to our website or the MOOC to learn more about it. So with that, if you can go to the next, thank you very much. Yes, just to reiterate the next date here. Thank you so much for participating today. It has been a real pleasure to host the event, and I would very much again would like to thank all of you for joining, and also all the speakers, panelists for a great contribution, the chairs, and also Wuhan International Water Academy for this collaboration. Thank you so much. And before we close, I would like to give opportunity for you to see each other and to take a group photo. And here's an opportunity because I think many of you have turned off your camera, and we may be using some of these photos on our websites or on promotional materials. So in case you prefer not to show your face, that's totally understandable. So that's okay. But I would very much appreciate if you can turn on your camera and maybe just to wave to each other to say hello. And my colleague, James, are you taking a photo? Tell us when you finish taking us, because then we just keep smiling until then.
Right, thank you.
Done?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. So with that, I would like to close today's session. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again in the next session.